Yo, what's going on today, guys? It's Sam or Samito. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a bit different. I've just had a lot of thoughts in my mind about, especially after BlizzCon, about what we could do to quote unquote, a lot of people like to say fix Overwatch. I'm gonna try to change my terminology to like improve Overwatch drastically, because fixing, quote unquote, fixing the game is, fixing is just not quite the right word for it, right? Like improving the experience is something that we all want, because truth be told, I think there's always something that we can improve on. So I don't think anything will ever be completely quote unquote fixed, but 5 ways to improve Overwatch's experience drastically in less than 24 hours. Let's get it. I know the game balance is something that people like to talk about a lot, myself included, but let's specifically hone in on Double Shield rather than the general patches of the game over the past 2 years. A very common misconception about Double Shield is that the reason that the comp is run is because the 2 barriers are the things that are too strong. In reality, that's not what's true. Nowadays, what's solidifying the tank meta is Orisa and specifically her Fortify, right? The ability to pop that cooldown on every 10 seconds, right, with a 4-second duration, and negate 50% of incoming damage while having 400 armor and 400 health because, you know, the damage resistance, makes her not only the best shield tank in the game, but the best brawl tank in the game. Even if you were to get past the barriers, like Dive would enable you to, and should in fact be effective against the double barrier, or Brawl on maps like King's Row, like if you run Rhine, you should be able to run past the Orisa shield. Once the Orisa loses the space, that's where her hero should have the disadvantage. But since we went into the 2-2-2 structure, she no longer needs the 50% damage reduction to help stand up to GOATs. If Fortify gets nerfed to about 20% of incoming damage nerf instead of 50, we would still see Orisa enable the bunker playstyle, which is what she was designed to do. Orisa is a hero that was meant to enable, you know, Bastion bunker on first point defense 2CP or hybrid maps, right? Numbani first point is where Orisa should be able to shine, but because her Fortify is so much stronger than every other tank's abilities in the game, and her pull as well probably needs to get nerfed. The radius of where it can pull you definitely needs to get nerfed. It's a larger radius than Graviton Surge, okay? Like, definitely needs to get reworked, but specifically the Fortify. This meta won't go away until Fortify is nerfed. It just won't happen. Rhine will never see the light of day, because why would you play Rhine when, you know, you're supposed to be good once you get past the barriers, but once you finally have used all of your resources to get past the barriers and you're vulnerable, the Orisa pops her Fortify, and all of a sudden she becomes basically a 1000 plus HP tank that can be healed. I think Genji Shurikens, when Orisa's fortified at full health, do about like 7 to 10 damage or something ridiculous in the body. You literally tickle her. So tune down that ability. You'll start to see Rhine be played. That'll filter Doomfist out of the meta a little bit more, who definitely is going to be a problem we'll talk about, you know, down the line. Thank you for the sub, dude. I appreciate it. But no, until Orisa gets out of the meta, this meta will not go away, and the way to do that is to nerf the pull radius, and specifically, and most importantly, the Fortify just needs to be nerfed. The second way we could drastically improve Overwatch is a priority queue. Now, what is a priority queue? Like, what would it consist of, right? It sounds kind of weird in concept, but basically the goal would be to create a healthy ecosystem where, you know, we have players cycling between the roles, different roles, and then that way, I think max times in general would be drastically improved for the game. And here's how it would work. So right now, I'm going to use the example of a DPS and tank queue, because in this patch, you know, DPS have the longest queues and tanks have the shortest, I believe. I think you can contribute that to the meta. I don't think off-tank players feel like they have many options, so they just don't want to play in general. I think this is the same problem we had back when Mercy was meta. There weren't any main support players. Like the people who came to Overwatch to play a first-person shooter game, you know, had to play Mercy. But they want to play Ana, right? Who's one of the best designed characters we've ever seen in the game. I think the same, you know, we do need to go back to our shooter roots as a game, and heroes like Orisa just, you know, need to be nerfed, and then even Doomfist too. Like heroes like Doom, Moira, Brig, like here specifically all new heroes to the game, LOL. So yeah, basically how that work is you'd queue tank and you'd help fill the role that doesn't have as many people queuing. And if you did that and you helped the community in that sense, right, the system would then reward you with a faster queue. Blizzard as a company needs to start rewarding players who are playing the game properly, who, you know, put forward the better foot to make this community better. It feels like, I would consider myself to be one of those players, and I know many of you do as well. It feels like we've gotten nothing but punishment from Blizzard in a sense that, like, you know, the people who aren't being healthy to the system, the people who aren't playing as a team, the people who aren't trying to make the ecosystem for ranked and the community better are being rewarded, as in they still have the privilege of being able to play, while we have to bite the bullet and, you know, just take the loss. I mean, I'll get more into this later, but that is kind of a different subject. But let's reward players who try to make this community better. Let's give them the fast passes, the people who make the effort to help fill the roles and get better quality matches and, you know, lower queue times to get the games going in the skill rating system should be rewarded. Priority queue would really, really, really help the ranked system. Now, the third thing we need to talk about is consistent balance patches, right? I know a lot of people, you know, the balance can be subjective. Like, a lot of people have subjective views on heroes, but there definitely are some set in stone things that you can't refute, like with facts. For example, the Orisa is the best tank in the game right now. I would say Orisa is the best individual character in the game right now, because she is definitely the one forcing the meta. Despite, you know, all the debates about Moira and Doomfist, etc., Moira still will be played regardless, like even over Ana in a lot of circumstances. So before we forget about that, but no, we need consistent balance patches, right? We need to be able to consistently patch out these characters when they become a problem, right? You know, it's very hard to tell what's gonna like evolve from the meta. Like, you can never get that right 100% of the time. But once there clearly is a problem, Blizzard needs to do a much better job of consistently coming in and fixing it, right? You know, we had a Baptiste buff come to the PTR today, or to live today, about Baptiste and Tor buffs, right? And as well as, you know, map bans, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But there's no reason at this point that Blizzard can't sit down and put out a balance patch every 30 days. Doesn't matter how big or small it is. If there's no problems with the game, it can be a small patch. But if clearly Double Shield is running rampant in the game, the same way that Goats ran rampant in the game for a long time, the same way that Dive ran rampant in the game for a long time, right? You know, we just need to take a reevaluation as to how we keep the quality of life of the meta and the game kind of in circle, if that makes sense. I don't know. We need consistent balance patches, period, end of story. And now to the balance, and this is where things get tricky, right? This is where it kind of becomes my personal views, and, you know, I will obviously cite instances in the game to kind of back what I'm saying, but the meta, the game balance, Blizzard. We love you, okay? After going to BlizzCon and meeting the team and meeting Jeff, which, by the way, I'm a little upset at some of my community for saying that I should have talked to Jeff about the meta when I got the chance to play Overwatch 2. Like, my job was to cover Overwatch 2, not talk about the meta. It would be incredibly rude and really poor reporting to bring up the meta of the previous game when I've been one of the few people who've given the chance to stream Overwatch to you guys. There's a right place and a right time. This is the right place and the right time, so we'll talk about it now. Oh my god, I'm getting a chest cramp. Heroes that oppress other characters, that force the meta in a sense, right, need to be tuned down. Some of the balance patches put in the game have just straight up removed counterplay from abilities that weren't effective. For example, Reaper Teleport, right? That change was a horrible change because you can't predict, it's incredibly difficult to predict when he's going to teleport behind you. Like, allowing the Reaper to freely teleport is not the solution, right? It's like make him teleport faster, but now when he's invisible, and this is especially prevalent in lower ranks where people struggle with him even more. I now struggle with it in higher ranks because you can't actually like outplay it, right? He's invisible. You know, changes like that have just slowly and gradually removed counterplay from the game. For example, Doomfist using his abilities on a soldier, right? There's nothing a soldier can do. Like if the Doomfist lands his abilities, you are dead. You can perfectly play it, but if he lands the abilities, you are dead. Interactions like that. If the Moira throws the orb across the map and you simply are in the bounce radius, you are dead, right? If you are just off on your own, trying to make a play, like stuff like that has just taken away from the game. You need to have abilities and interactions that can go either way. For example, Genji versus McCree, right? None of those heroes have an inherent advantage over each other, right? You don't pick one hero and therefore have the advantage. If the Genji can get the deflect on the stun, or deflect a shot and then get a good dash right click into him, he can win. But if the McCree rolls properly, like the interaction is not set in stone. But for example, if you're playing Dive into Mei with multi-freeze, like you just lose. Like you consistently lose because she just walls you and freezes you. It doesn't require any mechanics out of her. It doesn't require anything special. If she lands the freeze, you are screwed. Like the amount of counterplay between the variety of characters in this game has drastically gone down over the past 2 years. And that's why I want to revisit the core of the game balance. We need to bring this counterplay back. We need to bring interactive heroes like Ana back into the meta over Moira. Moira should never be a must pick over Ana. She's a fundamentally easier character that, you know, doesn't even fit the style of a shooter game. Now, she does have a place in the game. Don't take it that the wrong way. I do believe heroes like Moira and Brig should have a place in the game. The only problem comes in is if they're fundamentally better than the more mechanically demanding characters. And this is the same problem we saw with Mercy meta. It's the same problem we're seeing with we saw that with Brig as well. And now we see it with Orisa in a sense, right? Where, you know, the brain and interaction of a Reinhardt v Reinhardt in the start of the game was amazing. Like, that interaction is great. There's mind games. You have to be aware of your positioning, shield management, all these things, but Orisa just allows the player to bypass all of that and get more value, right? The skill ceiling of the game has been drastically lowered because of all the characters that have been introduced. And that sense of balance needs to be revisited. When we're looking to add new characters, we have to ask the question, and again, Orisa wasn't like this at the start, but in the 2-2-2 setting, she is now, so therefore we need to go back and patch it out quickly. We have to ask ourselves, what kind of game do we want to play? Overwatch is no longer a first-person shooter game. It's just not, and I think it's good that there are aspects of the game that aren't, you know, a first-person shooter, but you know, there's just minimal counterplay anymore. The amount of counterplay that you have in Overwatch has just gone down exponentially over the past 2 years. And if you look at characters that haven't been touched very much since release, Reinhardt, Genji, Soldier, Tracer, pre-patch Tracer, their win rates went down exponentially. Genji is the worst hero in the game. He was the staple of DPS play. When the game came out, people loved to play Genji. I love Genji's playstyle, but there is absolutely no reason to play Genji over Doomfist. Minimal reasons. I mean, maybe if they run a Bastion comp, you want to run Sombra, Genji, you know, EMP Nanoblade, but, you know, just citing what has happened to a hero like Genji and Ana over the past 2 years, they just don't get played. They can't be played. And that comes down to the game balance. So we need to revisit how we balance the game. We need to have consistent balance patches. The priority queue to make an ecosystem that's healthy for the game would be phenomenal. Consistent patches would be phenomenal. We need to get rid of double shield. It's ultimately at this point it comes down to the game balance, which is something that we have not been able to successfully tackle as a community for 2 years. And it's on us, guys. It really is on us to help Blizzard find the proper way to fix these things, find the proper way to get out there and make the changes. Another thing I would like to talk about is I would like to see Blizzard reward players who play the game properly and punish people who are out of voice chat, playing only one character, not working with your team. Find a way to get them out of the game. They listen, guys. Like I mean this in the nicest way possible. Okay, Overwatch. There's only one way to properly play Overwatch, right? Like, you can pick any character in any circumstance and try to make it work with your team, but there's only one correct way, no matter what the situation, to play Overwatch, and that is as a team. This game is a team-based game. The amount of games that are lost because there is some clown out of voice chat on some trash hero not playing with their team is unbelievable. And even if you win that game, it's incredibly frustrating, right? And this is what I meant when I said players who play the game properly are punished by the system, because Blizzard needs to find a way to find the people who play this team-based game competitively for themselves out of the competitive mode. Okay? How are we going to do that? It's going to take time. It's going to take effort, right? I think a good way to do that to start would be to force voice chat. There's no reason that you should not be in voice chat. If somebody's being rude to you, it takes one button to mute them, and you never or block them. You never have to talk to that individual again. They're gone. So the harassment thing, I get it happens. I'm sorry for you that it happens, but I cannot sympathize if there's a way for you to literally block that individual out of your existence forever. Like, you just block them. Like, seriously, literally just block them. Obviously, they're in the wrong. Report them too. Yeah, go ahead and report them too. That's pretty messed up. Anyway, continue. I will gladly talk to anybody who wants to talk about the meta. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope this kind of spread some light on some ways to improve Overwatch. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments as well. I just needed to make this video because I've been struggling with it internally. I needed to get my ideas out there. I needed to mentally debate with a lot of people online, help further my case, and maybe change my case to find better suggestions in the future. Also, rework more damage orb. That's what we need to do. I'll have a separate video on that though. Anyway, much love, everybody. Thank you for watching. I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.